Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today to the A-Bpm 7.3 Product Announcement Webinar. My name is Malcolm Ross, VP of Product Marketing. I'll be walking you through the features of the 7.3 release today. Before we begin, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. If you do have any questions, please use the GoToMeeting questions feature to submit those. I'll be answering as many, if not all, the questions at the end of the webinar. There's a lot of features, so feel free to introduce those as you see the features come up, and I'll go back and address those feature questions as you submit them at the end of the webinar, of course. And of course, if you know anyone who could not attend today's webinar, a full recording will be made available on the A-Bpm forum website underneath the software page where you download the A-Bpm software releases. For each release, you'll see a recording of not only the 7.3 Product Announcement webinar for this release, but as well for the 7.2, 7.0, and all previous releases of A-Bpm software with the recordings of the announcement webinar. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin and talk a little bit about the topics that we want to cover today for the 7.3 release. First is a little update on some A-Bpm news, and then I'd like to review some concepts introduced in the A-Bpm 7.2 release, specifically the records, reports, and A-Bpm sale features, because the 7.3 release continues to build off each of these key areas, as well as extend a number of other new features for both end users, designers, and administrators. But before we begin, I'd like to first introduce and make sure we're all aware of the announcement of A-Bpm World 2014. We are going to be hosting in Washington, D.C. on the same dates as last year, April 30th through May 2nd. We had a great turnout for the 2013 event and are looking to change the venue to the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C., which is right in the heart of Washington, D.C. We also have taken a lot of lessons learned from the previous A-Bpm Worlds and focusing a lot more content on developer-centric, end-user-centric, and center of excellence-centric content. So there's going to be a lot more educational material about building solutions, starting the journey with the A-Bpm software, and managing large teams in a center of excellence around your BPM program. And of course, we'll feature a number of customer stories from some of the latest customers who've implemented and gone live with the A-Bpm software. We do also have two special events planned. One is going to be a special celebrity guest speaker at the kickoff or keynote presentation. And we have actually bought out one of the entire Smithsonian museums for our evening event. It's going to be a fantastic event. And of course, as a techie, I won't allude to the exact Smithsonian, but as a techie kind of guy, I'm very excited on the location that we've chosen. And we'll have free reign to tour the Smithsonian while we enjoy dinner. And of course, if you'd like to register, there's an early bird registration fee through the end of the year for $225. And as usual, as with last year, those people joining us from the U.S. government, locally in Washington, D.C., with .mil and .gov email addresses, the fee is waived. So with that, let's go ahead and kick into some of the details about the A-Bpm 7.2 release, specifically records, reports, and sale. And this is a review of the April 30th release we had in some of these new architectural concepts which impact the way you both design solutions in A-Bpm as well as how your end users participate in processes inside the environment. Most importantly, I'd like to reiterate that the A-Bpm 7, 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 continues to fully support the application portal as well as the new A-Bpm Tempo, social, and mobile interfaces. It's a very important concept because a lot of our customers continue to upgrade to version 7, 7.2, 7.3, and enjoy the feature richness of the application portal experience while also starting to leverage some of the new features of the A-Bpm 7 end-user UI experience, especially the mobility side. We do encourage all of our customers to adopt upgrades as quickly as possible to stay current, to make sure you're having the latest version, to adopt all those great features and enhancements we introduce. And of course, we go to great effort to maintain that backwards compatibility with all your A-Bpm 6 application portal environments that you might be leveraging inside the A-Bpm 7 context as well. But a very important change in the A-Bpm 7 feature was an extension of how you design and navigate data architectures inside the A-Bpm product. And we call this records in A-Bpm. A-Bpm records are a concept introduced in 7.2, which was introduced business user-friendly definitions of your enterprise data. This not only changes the way that your end users navigate data inside the A-Bpm solution, but as well how you might think about architecting your solutions to take a more data-centric first approach before starting with your processes. This leads to great benefits in your ability to change processes more dynamically and easily, as well as your ability to separate data architecture and process architecture to maximize your scalability needs. What records provide is an integration to span across multiple data sources to consolidate information into a single, easily navigable view. As you define records inside the Appian product, they can reach across systems like SAP as service-backed records, data as data entity-backed records, and even Appian processes as process-backed records, and consolidate data into customer definitions with documents and invoices and all the other content in one view for your end users. As you define records, we're going to empower that record with 4 natural properties. The first is navigation, the ability to navigate and search that enterprise data right from a mobile device or right from a web experience. We've also modified and extended the reporting capabilities to allow you to report across any data source inside the enterprise. So no longer do you need to keep data inside the process analytics engine. You can generate pie charts, bar charts, grid reports that are really sourced from any data source you choose to attach record interfaces on top of. Third, we obviously provide process orchestration. So the way in which you want to do creations, reads, updates, and deletes of those enterprise record data, you can orchestrate those patterns in Appian processes. And then finally, provide social integration with those data sources. So you might have an existing database that has no social collaboration capabilities. And with the Appian Tempo social experience, we can now start to associate data records with social collaborations. And we're going to see a lot more of that inside the 7.3 release. So as a reminder, the records interface is a new tab inside the Appian 7.2 and 7.3 interfaces that allows you to build record dashboards that brings together this enterprise data into a single view. To build these dashboards, you use the new Appian Sail UI architecture for defining the layout and look and feel of each of those dashboards, and all those are a write once, run anywhere paradigm where as you define those definitions, they will both run inside the native web browsers supporting Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and Microsoft Internet Explorer, as well as running inside the Appian native applications for Android, iPhone, iPad, and BlackBerry devices. Now, most importantly, as well as we've changed the patterning how you design processes. A very common pattern inside the Appian 6 architecture was that you design a process as a data container and then associate quick tasks on that process to have ad hoc actions to interact with that data. This accommodates certain like case management scenarios and certain types of more dynamic patterns that can't be predicted through sequential processes. With the Appian Records architecture, you can now directly navigate that data source and then overlay processes directly on top of that data environment. This not only enables you to change and modify processes much more dynamically, but also inherit the context of your data. So as I click on an individual task, it's going to inherit the properties of that data, pre-populate the form, and then allow me to complete and initiate that process. And to reiterate, Appian Reports also now includes bar charts, pie charts, other elements that can reach directly across those enterprise data sources. So again, you no longer need to store data inside the process analytics engine simply for the purpose of reporting. You can extend the reporting interfaces for pie charts, bar charts, and other charting elements directly across either process analytics or directly to your enterprise data sources. So again, you can choose the data source of each of your content elements for the reports. And lastly, Appian Sail was introduced as a new UI, rule expression-based way for defining rule interfaces that apply to record and report dashboards in Appian 7.2. So this was an interface that's a write once, run anywhere environment. And in Appian 7.2, this was also a read-only experience for dashboards, which allowed you to display content of a record or display content for reporting purposes. In 7.3, where we're going to go into a lot more, is the introduction of dynamic behavior inside Sail, which does almost all the concepts that people were doing with JavaScript, plus much more dynamic capabilities are being introduced to create unique user experiences for your dashboards. So let's jump into the meat of Appian 7.3. And again, as I go through the 7.3 features, feel free to submit questions via the questions feature inside GoToMeeting. So 7.3, if you've seen the product announcement webinar or product user group meetings, so we recently held user group meetings in Frankfurt, Germany, London, England, as well as Sydney, Australia, and also select groups in Brisbane, Australia. You got a small preview of what was in this, but actually 7.3 encompasses a large set of new capabilities, both for end users, designers, and administrators. In this webinar, I'm going to be going through in detail each of those elements being introduced inside the solution. So very first, let's talk about records and how records are changing. Appian records are being extended in 7.3 to include a native search interface. Prior in 7.2, you had filter capabilities and listing of 100 elements, but now with Appian 7.3, we'll automatically identify the key fields in your record list title view and provide those fields available for searching for it by the end users. So as they type in a search box, say I type in the word federal here in the upper left, it automatically filters that content to the items already indicated inside the list view. So if you would like to implement search, all you need to do is upgrade to 7.3. Appian, as you upgrade to 7.3, will automatically find those key fields and enable those for search, and there's no actual design time configuration required, where search is just going to be a native property of all Appian records that you associate inside the product. Next, we're also creating multiple record dashboards. It's a great feature that allows for multiple views on top of an Appian record dashboard. By default, each record includes two default views, so the summary and related actions view. But now designers can choose to implement as many unique dashboard views on top of a data set as they wish. So here you can see I have user metrics and social metrics as additional dashboard views in the context of this one customer. Now, each of these dashboards can also be security controlled, so you can choose which dashboards are viewable to which users, and of course the content inside the dashboard can also be separately security controlled as well. And each of the dashboards is constructed using the Appian SAIL architecture. Now Appian also, for both process-backed and data entity-backed records, has a cap to ensure that we don't deliver too much content to the end user of 100 records in any list view. Now, as an indicator, we now show at the bottom of the list view the number of total records, and that's only showing the first 100 results. Using the new enhanced search capability, as well as the existing filter capability, users will be able to more directly isolate select an individual records they might want to find. But it clearly indicates at the bottom now that there's, in this case, 1,517 total records available, and it's only showing the first 100 results. Now this condition of 100 elements only applies to process-backed and data entity-backed records. If you do have a service-backed record, you can actually control the number of elements fetched through your own programmatic interface. Now jumping over to the Appian social updates. So in 7.3, we also continue to enhance a lot of the social features inside the product. The first one being introduced is greater search capabilities to search by authors and star status. So keywords may be now used to search for select elements. So if I use the from keyword, for example, in the screenshot you can see I see from Deborah, it's going to automatically identify that as I'm searching for the user first name or last name. It will automatically filter the search results to being any user who matched those criteria, both first name and last name, and then show me those results. As well as if I want to add additional criteria, I can overlay, say, from Deborah, and then also add the word Saturday. The word Saturday then will be interpreted as something inside the event text post to also search on additional conditions all inside one search string. We also like to search on the starred status of each element as well, so I can identify elements that I've starred and filter to just those search elements as well. Search has also been internationalized, so these keywords, if I use the natural language in Spanish, French, Portuguese, any of the supported language of Appian, you'll notice that you can also use these keywords. In the case of Spanish here, we have the word de, which means from in English, and of course I can use those keywords as well in my natural language to filter to specific elements. We also enhanced the way that you receive notifications, that you can receive these based on simply starring an element of a feed entry. So participating in the social collaboration by commenting in 7.2 and earlier allowed you to receive notifications of when other users commented on that same tempo post. Now, sometimes users don't want to actively participate inside the comment string, but simply want to monitor the status of what's going on, receive email notifications. Now, by simply starring any tempo post, I do not have to comment or participate in the conversation, but I will receive now email notifications whenever there's a new update or change to that environment. Other extensions inside the context of the social interface is we like to now view the original feed entry text and comment notifications. So when I receive those, I see not only the new comment, but also the original text inside the email notifications. We also like to expand and contract the notification window, so or the comments window inside each tempo entry. Now, jumping to some more important changes inside the product is the inclusion of a new what we call participants feature. Many times when I post something to the A-Bpm product, I'm going to post it and make sure certain users are notified of their participation requirements in that collaboration. Now, to distinguish, posting in A-Bpm is a naturally open behavior for collaborating, meaning that any user that is searching or looking for information can see any of my posts. Posts have no inherent security model, and they're designed to be a socially open and sharing concept to share knowledge and have open collaborations. A lot of times, though, users won't be notified unless they're explicitly following a user inside the interface in 7.2 and earlier. So to accommodate this, we add the participants feature. The participants feature allows me to include explicit participants at either the author creation time of the post or at the comment time, so maybe I'm commenting. So for example, let's say I'm sending a post notification to one of my coworkers, Ben, and I'm asking, what is the status of ABC Corp? And Ben doesn't necessarily know that offhand. This is an open post, and he says, well, I don't know, maybe if I forward this or add Cindy as a participant, she might know. So you can include participants. On inclusion of new participants, both at the author or the comment time, they will receive a notification that you've been added as a participant to this collaboration, kind of an invite to collaborate, and then you can click on the link and go directly to that collaboration environment. Now with posts, we've also done an important change in the concept of messages. Messages in 7.2 and earlier had two logical states. There was an unlocked message and a locked message. The unlocked message inside the 7.2 and earlier environment was interpreted as basically a unlocked, open, and unsecured post. There was a lot of confusion in the customer base of the difference between an unlocked message and a post, and really there wasn't much. So we've changed the behavior of unlocking and locking messages. And the most important change is that messages by default are always secured. There is no naturally open state of messages. They're always secured to simply the author and the recipients specified in the message behavior, much more like email is in a private communication framework. Messages, though, have a lock or unlock status, which means that as the author of the message, I can control whether the recipients can add additional recipients. So take that same example where I had a communication with Ben, and I sent a communication to Ben saying, hey, what is the status of ABC Corp? Now, I intend this to be a private communication between myself and Ben, so I would use that as a message instead of a post. And that message inside the environment, if I specified it as unlocked, I allow Ben to then include other recipients inside that. So we can add additional people or participants to that message, and we can have a larger secure conversation. Now, in the same front, if I send that same message to Ben, but instead I ask, what's the status of my salary increase? Well, that is a more private communication. I don't want Ben sharing that with anyone else, so I can add the lock behavior on that. That will prevent Ben from adding any additional participants. So there can't be any additional recipients or participants. It will always remain a secure conversation between myself and Ben. No one else outside of our two users will be able to discover that conversation. Now, if you had been using the messages feature prior to A-Bpm 7.3, since messages behave slightly differently inside the 7.2 and earlier release, we're going to be migrating unlocked messages to be actually open posts, because that was the intent of the unlocked message before. So the existing unlocked messages that you have inside your tempo stream will convert to posts in the same context of being unsecured, and future messages will adopt this behavior of unlock or lock behavior. Now, additionally, inside 7.3, we've introduced the concept inside social collaboration of record and file tagging. So from the A-Bpm Smart Service, we're posting the event to a feed. You'll see two new options, one for attachments and one for record tags. The attachments option allows you to attach documentation to any process-generated event posts. So here I can see Max Bain said we had a great turnout for Appian 7.2 Australia product announcement, attaches the event attendee list, and then directly inside the interface I see the 2 documents I can download. This works both in the web and mobile interfaces to direct download documentation. I no longer need to look up documents or post URL links to those documents. It's all from the document management system Appian provides. Similarly, if I want to have a conversation instead of about documents, I want to have a conversation about specific data records inside my enterprise environment. So maybe I have a invoice, or in this case I have a specific customer, FC Supermarkets and Retail, and then Ted Hewley here saying, great article in this Retail Trends magazine. Is associated a record link to FC Markets and Retail. By clicking on those record links, it will direct drill to the record dashboards, allowing me to see the entire data context. So this allows us to evolve in the future releases to more closely tie social collaborations to explicit data records, both for the benefit of social collaboration to discover and understand the data that we're talking about, as well as backwards tracking. As I look at the data record itself, I'll be able to track back in an audit trail the collaborations more easily that occur in the context of that record. We've also modified the filter on the left-hand side of the social stream called the participating view. Prior to Appian 7.3, the participating view filtered to not only elements that I was explicitly included in participating, either through direct comments or through a direct targeted message, being a group member I was posted inside of or targeted directly to me. The participating view now filters that to only the elements where I have been explicitly included as a member. So not where I am included as a group membership. So for example, if Ben had generated a post and included me as a participant explicitly, Malcolm Ross as a participant, I would see that in my participating view. Similarly, if Ben had sent that same message to the marketing group, a larger group element, I would not see that in my participating view because I may or may not actually be participating. It was intended for a larger group or maybe other people inside that group. So jumping over to Appian 7.3 reporting updates, a lot of changes inside the reporting architecture. The very first addition is the addition of new chart types available inside the Appian reporting dashboards. These are all generated from the Appian Sail UI. The very first one you'll see in the upper left is actually a new evolution of what a lot of customers have been using, the chevron type milestone tracking. So if you want to track milestones and progress of processes or events or data, this is a great report attribute which allows you to specify the individual milestones. Past milestones will indicate in the disabled view, kind of grayed out. The current milestone is bolded, and then future milestones that have yet to be achieved are unbolded in the normal text. The green indicator indicates the progress of that overall environment. This can be applied to either reporting dashboards, record dashboards, and we'll get to in a little bit of task dashboards. We also include the progress bar, which allows you to measure percentages completion of any individual elements. Again, the data source of all these can be back from any source you like. We included pie chart and bar chart inside the 7.2 release, but now have extended the line chart and column chart inside the 7.3 as well. So you can generate line charts and column charts in any of these views as well inside the system. We've also enabled drillable charts and grids. So each of the charts that you see here, like a pie chart, it can include drillable behavior on each of the wedge and elements of the chart, as well as individual elements inside the grid control can now be also drilled to. You can specify the drill path behavior to go to maybe Appian task elements, Appian specific elements, or they can drill to maybe external content, external links. So you can design the grid and the drill path behavior you want for each of those columns inside the solution. So jumping then to Appian 7.3 task updates. The most important addition is the task reports concept. Task reports is a way for generating custom and unique task dashboard views for specific roles or functions of users inside your enterprise. Appian, of course, ships a default task list inside the Appian Tempo environment, which includes a basic listing of all the tasks been assigned to the user. It's always important to give a user a default task list so that they can always have a view that they can see all their tasks, no matter what solution is generating those tasks. But inside here, you can also generate additional task report views, which will appear in the left-hand menu of the task environment. So as you click on the task tab, you'll see 3 default views, such as the assigned to me, sent by me, and starred. And then any additional view will appear below that. And in this case, I have an expense approvals and timesheet view that I've added to the solution. These views are basically free-form sale pages. So you can design whatever content you want inside these task views. So in this case, I created a grid control. That grid control is now filtered to specifically just expense tasks. I see a listing of all those tasks that just have to do with expenses. And I also see key column and attributes on those tasks, such as the employee who submitted the expense, the dollar amount of that expense, and the date this expense was submitted. In addition, down below, I have specific dashboard reports showing me my performance possibly of handling expenses. So you can add whatever content you want inside the sale context and have also the layout control menus available to you to lay these out in the appropriate manner as well. Now, in addition to the task reports view, you also have, in addition, this enhancements to the default task view. I think last thing to mention on the task reports view before I move on is to generate a task report is the exact same way you generate a normal tempo report. So on the report definition page from the design time experience, there's a new checkbox available to you, which simply you check that and say, make this a task report. If it's checked, it will automatically show up inside the task menu instead of the report menu. It also inherits the same attributes of the report dashboard, meaning that you can security control each of these views to ensure that each user does not see all the task views. They only see the ones that may be applied to their specific role in the organization. Now, sorting tasks, viewing, filtering by deadline, accepting group tasks have all been added to the solution as well. So tasks may now be sorted by the creation time. Deadline indicators are now available on all tasks. So if you define a task deadline, you'll see that indicated on the right-hand side. So if you see in the screenshot to the right, I see the first task is due in 3 days. The next 2 tasks are already overdue, indicated by the red alarm clock. A default filter is now available to apply also to the deadline value. So that can automatically filter by your overdue tasks, tasks due in the next 7 days, and different types of attributes of the deadlines. An accepted group task now indicates the user who has actually accepted the task inside the task list view. We open tasks in now the default environment as well from notifications. So if you've ever received an email notification from the Appian environment in 7.2 and earlier, there's a task notification link. To view the task, please follow this link. And you can see that highlighted in the screenshot. That follow this link in 7.2 always points to the application portal, which is one of the main default environments for a lot of our users. In 7.3, we've now changed that to adhere to the default environment setting you use in custom.properties. So if you're not familiar, there's a configuration in Appian called under custom.properties where you can set the default environment. This has 3 potential settings. You can set the default environment to the application portal. You can set it to the tempo UI, or you can actually set it to the design time UI as well. And based on that setting, we'll also toggle the email notifications to go to the appropriate environment that you want as your default system. There are some conditions. So for example, if you set the tempo as your default environment, and then you create a non-tempo enabled task, those will still go to the portal to ensure that we properly render those inside the context of the right environment. Now, continuing on the task form notifications, we've also added a new feature that applies not only to the latest version of 7.3, but also all older versions of Appian as well, going back to, I believe, 6.6.1. If you include an option to do geo-lock on a text field, we will now render that differently on mobile devices. So if you add a text field component using the Appian Forms Designer to a Appian task form definition, and you give it a field label of geo_LOC, so geolocation underscore, and then give it whatever additional parameters you choose, such as geolock field 1, geolock field 2, whatever you choose as the field label, not the field, well, sorry, the field definition, or the field name, not the field label. The text field will appear as a geolocation field on Android and iOS, and the text field will appear as a normal text field on web and BlackBerry. So on the right-hand side, you can see some examples of that. Instead of giving a text input, they simply have a button there on the right-hand side. By hitting that button, we will activate the GPS on that mobile device, tie into the GPS, and do the best possible GPS location of that user. So, and then return back the latitude, longitude coordinates of the user to the text field. Additionally, on Android devices only for now, signature capture is now an option. So if you use a upload file component on an Appian task form, for Android users, there's now an additional option which allows them to choose to draw a signature as the input for that file environment. So you'll see this if you ever use an Android device using the latest release of the Appian mobile release software on the upload file component. And of course, by simply selecting the draw signature option, it'll automatically go to a landscape view, allowing you to view that inside the landscape monitor and then write your signature directly inside the interface. And to reiterate, that is currently only available for the Android. So then continuing on, general Appian 7.3 general updates. We now also allow you to change your password from the Tempo environment. Now, the password control field is actually a smart environment, so it will detect whether the user who is currently logged in is using either Appian authentication credentials in the native Appian authentication engine, or that user account is mapped to a third-party authentication provider. If it's detected that the user is using a third-party authentication provider, such as Active Directory or SAML, then there will be no change password option. So if you ever see this in upgrading to 7.3, and then you see that there's no option for changing your password, it's most likely because that specific user account is mapped to a third-party authentication provider. But if they are using Appian authentication, then that will appear. Text and paragraph form components also now support extra spaces and line breaks. If you're using these inside the forms environment and you're capturing lots of line breaks or extra spaces, those will all be properly stored inside the system. We've also optimized the printing of content inside Tempo. So if any user chooses to go to the File, Print menu in the web browser, so using Chrome, Safari, IE, or Firefox, and they go to the browser native print function, Appian will automatically apply a different cascading style sheets which will remove what we call the Chrome or the navigational menus and optimize the layout of that page for printing. So here, for example, on the right-hand side, I see my aircraft fleet reports. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the top-hand menu, there is no navigational menu. It's now isolate just the reports dashboard I want to print, and now optimize that for printing on whatever page layout I'm choosing to print on. Now, jumping over to the design time improvements for Appian 7.3. There are a number of changes to the design time architecture. Most importantly is the introduction of dynamic and new sail components, as well as a number of other elements that we're going to be covering in detail, of course. So to summarize very quickly, there's a number of new sail components which support the creation of dynamic experiences and dashboards inside the environment. These include the addition of basic fields such as checkboxes, drop-downs, and multiple drop-downs and radio buttons, the new chart types that we discussed already, a new button widget allowing you to add buttons anywhere on a page, and also the new grid field component which supports the linking behavior inside the existing grid sail components. Now, to cover some of these in detail, the addition of the checkbox, drop-down, multi-drop-down, radio, and button object allows you to create interactive patterns on a page. So I can have a cascading drop-down on a report dashboard. I could have a radio button toggle different elements inside the page, or maybe I can add button elements which also toggle different elements inside the overall page layout. Each of these is configured using an Appian sail expression, and some of them support unique behavior like the button control allows you to control not only the text of the buttons, but also the coloration of each button, green, gray, or red, with also confirmation windows as an option. And you can also specify what we call button collections. So I can have a collection of buttons all toggling a single value. There's also, as we mentioned before, new chart types, which are all under the context of defining Appian sail expressions. And of course, the new grid field component. So we saw this before as far as the linking behavior inside sail grids. You can now use that grid field component to generate links to tasks, Appian-specific objects such as tasks. So by using the grid field component and Appian objects, We can recognize, say, if you're linking to a task and automatically maintain that linked behavior inside the same browser window, allow the user to also hit the back button to return to the exact same dashboard experience. If it is a task experience as well, we also filter the environment to ensure that, control the environment that when the user completes that task, take them right back to the task dashboard or report they're reviewing. Now, dynamic sail is the ability to start to have elements inside the environment toggle each other off and on and create a really unique dynamic experience. We're going to see some demonstration of this at the end of the webinar. Dynamic sail allows users to use conditional expression logic that's re-evaluated to generate dynamic interactive dashboards inside the environment. Dynamic sail applies to three main UI elements inside the 7.3 release. The first is custom task reports and dashboards. The second is record dashboards, and the third is report dashboards. Other UI elements, such as A-Bpm process start forms and A-Bpm task forms, are not yet supported with dynamic sail, but we are looking to support that very shortly. So let's talk a little bit about how dynamic sail works, and think about this in an architectural flow. The very first thing you do to generate a dynamic sail environment is to define the sail expression with an initial context. So I'm going to apply, say, a sail expression to apply to a record dashboard or possibly a report or task dashboard, that initial context I receive. The sail expression is going to use concepts using what we call local variables. So I might specify a local variable of a value and populate that with a contextual data as I run that sail expression inside the environment. So I'll give it the context, evaluate the expression, and generate a user interface definition. That user interface definition then is interpreted on each of the environments that the user might be using. So if they're coming in via a web browser, we'll evaluate that for the web environment. If they're coming in via a mobile device, such as an iPhone or Android in the native mobile app, we'll evaluate that for the native app experience. Now, in 7.2, this was the end of the story. You had a read-only experience that went up to this far. We generate the UI, and that was it. Now we allow the user to interact with the environment and basically start to submit different elements and submit components inside the solution. So for example, on the left-hand side, I have an example sail dashboard. I have a pie chart and a grid, and then I define two dynamic elements for interaction, which is a filter by department or title. So this is a employees by department. It's slicing and dicing, showing the number of employees I have in each department, and then showing me a list of all those employees down below. The interaction is going to occur when I start typing into a specific field. So I'm interacting with the form now. This interaction could have been typing into a text or paragraph field, selecting a value from a drop-down, pressing a button, any type of element that's supported in sail. And by submitting that element, I'm actually saving that into a local variable. So I'm saying I'm typing the letters E and G, I'm saving that into a local variable, and then the A-Bpm sail architecture will automatically identify all the areas where that local variable is also used for generating data, such as the pie chart and the grid, that could have been used in a conditional if statement or any type of rule expression. And then we'll dynamically re-evaluate that page. So we're going to filter it back up to the content. The context has changed. And now I'm going to re-evaluate that page, saying down just what the delta is in that sail definition. Through this behavior, this is kind of a very basic example, but through this behavior, you can not only do almost everything you could do inside JavaScripting for doing dynamic show hide, cascading drop-downs, dynamically laying out button elements, but you can also do things that were never possible in the A-Bpm forms design experience prior, such as creating multiple or infinite forms. You can have forms that continuously generate new sections, new sections, new sections in an infinite manner. You could also create one field, have interaction with multiple elements. So if you're familiar with the A-Bpm portal reports, you might be familiar with the fact that there is a filter search option on each column header that you can toggle off and on. Now that only always applied to the one element I was looking at. So I might have had multiple reports on the dashboard, but I have to filter each of those individually. Now you can create, say, one element, like here the department element, filter multiple elements inside the entire page all at once. Now to support this rule generation in the design time experience, we've also added inline rule impact and dependency analysis. So as you define these rules, both for sail or for other purposes, and also constants, While you're designing that rule, you'll see the impacted rules, which are the rules that call the current rule I'm working on, as well as the dependent child rules. By selecting those rules directly in the impacted or dependency element, I can navigate up and down the parents and children of that rule definition. Now, some more minor elements. Rule event execution has also been improved. So if you're using the process of BPM in rule event to just look for or listen for states of your process, the execution performance has been improved. You'll probably only notice a difference if you've been using the rule event heavily in your process design. And the field for defining a rule definition has also been improved. So the text field where your inner rules has been for creating expression now displays text in Courier font and provides a larger viewing area for improved readability. Now, going back to the record search concept, as I mentioned before, we've extended record search to process back, data entity back, and service back records. But out of the box, Appian understands how to search a database, and we understand how to search our process environment. But we do not necessarily understand out of the box how to search a custom service back record. This might be a custom API call you use to go to your search service. So while you're developing a service back record, we now allow you to capture the search value that the user is typing into the search menu and pass that to your service back record to support the search behavior for service back records. We've also productized the where contains function, which is a function for finding array items that match a specific value. So you'll see the where contains function up here inside the rule expression environment. It allows you to pass it an array of values. So if I pass it the letters, an array populated with A, B, C, D, E, and then I give it the condition of look for the value of B, it will return the indice of 2, showing me exactly where that value is found. Now, the where contains function was actually a hidden function that some of our users had discovered and had started to use. Now it is a productized and supported function, but it also is fully backwards compatible with that existing where contains function. So if you have been using the hidden where contains function, feel free to continue using it. You do not need to change your processes or rules to accommodate the change in 7.3. Now, to facilitate application management, exporting, and importing, we've also done some modifications to the XML package you use to export and migrate your solutions. First, the original order of object UIDs is preserved inside the application XML. A lot of times when we would re-export an element, we might rejigger the XML artifacts or UID artifacts. Now that list is maintained in a specific order, so it's easier to introspect and look at. XML for each object type maintains original namespace prefix, and the process model XML excludes transient data elements. Form definitions export consistently if the form wasn't modified since the last export. So if I'm trying to parse the form definition or look for certain patterns, we maintain that inside the Appian application packages. And fast configurations also export in consistent order. So this gives you a little bit more predictability. If you were doing some introspection into the application XML definitions, as you migrate from your dev to test production environments, we make that more consistent so you can have scripts and patterns looking for maybe certain types of design patterns in your solutions. We've also enhanced the web service error handling. So the web service smart service, prior to Appian 7.3, did not catch all HTTP response codes for the call and allows you to configure your error handling based on it now. So what 7.3 introduces is the concept of being able to catch things like a HTTP 404 or 303 response. If I had a condition where, say, prior to 7.3, 7.2 and earlier, I invoked a web service, and that web service, the web server for that web service is currently down, and by normal default, I would get a 404 error code back from the HTTP error code. Now, that would often pause the web service node by exception. Now in 7.3 and higher, we actually pass those error codes, those HTTP error codes, back to the web service expression, allowing you to catch the 303 or 404 messages and then handle those inappropriately. So if you want to handle those in process, you can say, hey, catch the 404, go to a timer function, wait 5 or 10 minutes, and then retry it in a few more minutes later. Now going into some administrative updates for the Appian product. Again, we've enhanced the administration across a number of areas. We're going to cover that right now. Most importantly, we've introduced a number of logging improvements inside the product. So logging always helps our administrators debug, identify issues inside the product in a more proactive fashion. Where we introduced logging enhancements is to first do data type logging. So we now record metrics on system and custom data types to record more specifically the data sources that you might be attaching to in your custom data type environments. We also use a caching mechanism for Appian records, which has also a records logging mechanism enhanced as well. So record metrics on caches inside the application server are now also included in the log file. As we evolve the social activity stream behavior, we're also adding new metrics and logs to capture things like the number of unique users who have sent and received social tasks, and new metrics concerning attaching files and records to news entries inside the environment as well. We've also improved the logging for those customers who are using custom authentication providers. So if you do not use Appian authentication environment, you use a third-party Active Directory or some other system, we now also log and record any failed login attempts or custom authentication for custom authentication provider systems. Before, those were only available inside the third-party authentication provider, but now they're additionally available inside the Appian log files as well. We've also added 4 new languages: Swedish, Italian, Russian, and Japanese. So on the right-hand side, you see the full list of languages supported by Appian out of the box, which include things like English, Spanish, French, Chinese, Dutch, German, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, again, both Spain and Mexican, and of course these 4 additional languages. Most importantly is that the languages that we introduce are not just for the template environment, but also for the portal experience. So if you're looking to upgrade your portal interface as well to include these 4 languages, 7.3 does provide that capability. Now, we've also configured the option to add additional security for those of you using the Appian mobile application. Appian has included always, for a long time, a separate mobile passcode lock feature, which allows individual users to add a passcode lock on top of their access to the Appian mobile app. Now, that passcode lock prior to 7.3 was an optional configuration for each user. Now in 7.3 or higher, it can be specified as a mandated configuration on top of that environment. So an administrator can, inside custom.properties, say that I want all users who attach to this specific Appian server, they must use the passcode lock in order to access the Appian environment using their Appian native mobile app. Passcode lock is a great security feature which adds a 2-factor authentication. And not only is it for when people initially authenticate, but also every time they switch in and out of the Appian app. So for example, if they leave Appian running in the background and then they happen to lose their device, if the thief tries to then go to the Appian app, they will be presented with the mobile passcode lock, another 2-factor authentication. They need to rapidly enter the number to access the Appian app every time they go to it. We've also enhanced the email administration, so configuration adds to prevent mass notifications. So Appian is a very powerful tool, but it also allows you to maybe do really bad processes that can send mass notifications on accident to lots of users. As administrative control on top of that, you can now configure the max recipients option to configure the number of recipients possible to prevent mass notifications going out to the entire, say, company. By default, this limit is set at 100, but it's toggleable inside custom.properties. We'll also add support for SMTP over Secure Socket Layers, SSL. So if you do want to have your emails sent out in a secure fashion, you can simply specify now the SSL credentials for the environment. We've also identified the SPF for Send Email Smart Services and been improved. So SPF stands for Sender Policy Framework. It's a best practice for web-generated emails by setting the sender and return path email headers to site-wide notification sender email addresses. That's going to help you make sure that emails sent out via the Appian automated Appian Smart Service for emails is not going to be caught by spammers or spam filters to ensure that it does properly go to the targeted recipients in a proper registered fashion. Upgrading customers should see the migration guide for how this affects your existing current configuration. We've also added web service custom property prefix support for dynamic reloading, so change the properties of the conf.node.webservice prefix, no longer require you to restart the server. As well, we no longer include JBoss as a native application server inside the Appian installer. So if you do a fresh install of the Appian product, you will be required to install JBoss separately. For production use, it is the JBoss EAP, Enterprise Application Platform. 6.1.1 is the only support JBoss application server. If you do look to upgrade to 7.3, please do look at your version of JBoss and make sure you are in compliance in the certified version that we provide or we support. Another important feature with the Appian product is the Secure Credential Store. So Secure Credential Store is a repository within Appian capable of storing credentials for third-party systems. So this is a way to allow you as an administrator or designer to securely store encrypted credentials within tables of the Appian primary data store. A single set of credentials are stored for each external system identified by an external system key, and credentials for an external system are stored as an attribute value pairs. The attributes are stored in plain text, and the values are encrypted. So this is a much better way for storing all your authentication parameters and credentials to all the third-party systems you might be connecting to. So this is also available as an API if you're developing a custom plugin for support, say, a service back record. You can use the Secure Credential Store API to store those credentials to things like Salesforce or other external systems to ensure that those credentials cannot be read by other designers and administrators and are only invoked by the Appian system for authentication to those external systems using the key value. So last few updates. Developer features, refer to release notes, of course, for more details, but one of the most important ones is in January, we released a preview API to the process upgrade environment. So process upgrade APIs allow you to do bulk in-flight modification of processes. So this allows you to say, if I have 10,000 processes running on version 5 of a process model, and I want to migrate all 10,000 of those to version 6. Prior, Appian had a preview API. Now it's a fully supported and productized API, fully documented and available to you to do bulk process modification. Of course, refer to our best practices and tutorial guides on how to properly implement that inside your environment. We also, with each release, announced deprecation of older APIs as well as removal of APIs of previously announced deprecations. Just to be clear, a deprecation is not a removal. A deprecation is simply an intent to remove in the future release. Removal means that that API is no longer available in the product. I encourage you all to look at the release notes to see exactly what those are affected. And of course, with each release, we also resolve any issues out there. So you can see that we've resolved issues across administration, data management, document management, functions and rules, mobile apps, plugins, and process exec records, and tempo. And of course, refer to the release notes if there's specific items that you were looking for a resolution on. So with that, in the last few minutes I have here, again, I'd like to remind everyone, if you would like to ask questions, feel free to use the GoToMeeting questions feature to submit those questions inside the environment. And this is an example 7.3 environment. We'll see that some of these features available inside the system include things like record tagging. Here I see a new high priority service request was created for this Grand Cessna 7407. And as I hover over these, you can see the record tags appear right there. So if I want to filter or go directly to that record, I simply click on the element. It takes me right to the record dashboard, so I can see that context of what people are actually talking about inside the system. Hitting back takes me right back to where I was inside the social activity stream. Similarly, as you have file attachments, I can also associate those files right here. File attachments are not only available via the web, but also from mobile devices to download and view those documents associated inside the system. And of course, each of these can also include multiple elements of each. So here I have multiple record tags associated with this. In this example, I have a wind advisory from a weather tracking app showing me that there's a weather event in Flagstaff, Arizona. It cross-correlated that weather event with my records and identified that I have 2 aircraft inside that in Flagstaff, Arizona, and said that here's the 2 aircraft currently affected. If I click on that Learjet 60XR, I can see that its current location is Flagstaff, Arizona, with all the details, and then say maybe want to initiate a new service request, then take care of that aircraft inside the environment. So of course, another key feature introduced in Appian 7.3 was that concept of custom task dashboards. You'll see these on the left-hand menu. So here I can see I have my default views, but then I see right here 2 custom task dashboards, acquisitions, and task reports. By selecting acquisitions, I have a custom sale page now that was developed for the specific purpose of working on acquisition-based tasks. I defined here a dynamic sale environment that allows me to filter on multiple elements inside the grid. So as I type the word GPS, it automatically filters without even me hit the enter key, all the elements that apply to that GPS unit. By backspacing out, maybe removing that filter, again showing me all the elements. I can combine multiple filters. Say, let's see what's been assigned to me, something to purchase, new sample requests. Go ahead and select the task, hit OK, and then take me right to the element I want to work on inside the system. As I go ahead and say upload these elements, go ahead and fill out my form, hit submit, and let's see, values required up in description. I have a required field, unfortunately, inside there. Let me go back to my acquisition task inside the system. These are some quick mock-up examples I did in a beta version. So there we go, same form, something to purchase. And then go ahead and hit submit. And as you can see, as I hit submit, it takes you right back to the task dashboard. So this allows you to create that unique experience for custom task handling, as well as allow the user to drill into the task and take them right back to the task board they were, so they continue working on their normal work that they were continuing on. Similarly, you can do the same type of dynamic elements with, say, report dashboards. If I click on a Appian report inside of here, I want to filter by specific values. Here I define a specific sale interaction that shows me multiple elements inside a page. So I have some bar charts, pie charts. I have an image showing me the location of all my aircraft. But right here, I have a drop-down which I only want to affect this one element. So I want to see airplanes by manufacturer. This is showing me all of them by customer. And have, say, I just want to see my Bank of Tennessee aircraft. So I filter that. I now see Gulfstream, Learjet, and Boeing. And I can see the number of aircraft filtered by that one environment. As you can see, that sale interaction was defined just for this one drop down to this, but all my other pages, all my other 8 elements remain the same. So you can define the configuration you want to say, if I want this to affect one, many, it's how you're going to specify the local variable save and how you save into each of those. I would encourage each of you, we do have a sale tutorial on the Appian Forum website if you're interested in learning how to define these dynamic interactions. I encourage you to go to Appian Forum to explore these sale tutorial environments. So with that, I see we're right at the end of the hour, and I'm going to jump into as many questions as possible here. We have a number of them built up. So let me jump right back to the top. Are there any plans to include other search fields apart from just title and records? Yes. You can actually include as many fields as you want inside the title list view definition. So there are techniques to, say, implement those in a hidden fashion, but keep them inside for available for search. And of course, I'd point to our Appian Forum Center of Excellence team for kind of best practice on implementing that. So I see some applause for implementing the search feature. We're very excited about rolling that out as well. Can the comments in the social be set up in a process, or is it only manual? Comments in social can be set up via process, also via manual. So that's something that's a native part of the Appian product for a long time. There's actually a post-comment smart service as well as a ability to do it via the UI. So the quick answer to that is yes, you can do comments as well as a specific type of comment called a hazard via process as well as via manual. Can you have multiple conditional searches on fields? No, I'm not search. So, so the conditional keyword from, so the question was on the search parameters here, I want to have, say, multiple conditions. So here I have Deborah, and now I want Deborah and Saturday. So now I can see that it's identified from Deborah. So whenever you use the from field, the very next word is always going to be used for that conditional search on the name parameter. So from Deborah. And here I see Saturday. And here I also see starred. That's not going to occur, but if I went back, say star the element, and then said starred, maybe it hasn't quite indexed yet. Bad demonstration, but probably needs to go index it before I apply that search. But here you can combine multiple search parameters inside a single view. What is the role of participant? Just getting notifications or contribution as well? The role of participant is both. So as I define a new participation, hey, what is going on? I can add participants just like this. Say I need Mary King as well as Melissa Hall. And the purpose of that notification is simply to make sure that those people are made aware of that notification. So here I can see my participation environment. If I hover over participants, you'll see all the people who are currently notified or tagged as participating inside the system. So the purpose is to make sure that those people are aware of the conversation going on, as well as invite them to collaborate. Of course, the collaboration is purely optional on their part. You can't force them to collaborate. If you want to force them to do something, we'd recommend doing that in the context of a task. How does a user add record tags, or does not need to be managed via process? So currently in the 7.3 environment, record tagging is available as a process action only. So we do intend to add record tagging as an end-user UI capability as well in the upcoming release, but right now in 7.3, you generate this record tags via the process smart service environment. In posts, are users also able to tag active processes? Yes, that's a good question. So in posts, first, if you tag records, and you can have what we call process-backed records. So you can have records that are directly mapped to processes. So yes, you can do that. Again, per the previous question, record tagging is currently available as a smart service action. And as long as you have that process registered as a record, you can do tagging to specific processes. So yes, the question's on kind of the future of Appian Sale. We're always looking to make the definition of sale dashboards easier. I would say look forward to future releases and upcoming releases in 2014 as we evolve the sale architecture for design time usability. Can you do any searches or facets on tasks in the task report? Currently inside task reports, we don't have a search interface. We allow you to have these default facet views. But again, by creating custom task reports, you can create custom search parameters. So we have the default task view, which provides a number of packaged facet filters. And then you can create custom task views, which include any number of dynamic search parameters, dynamic fields you want to lay out inside the sale dashboard experience. Are there any plans to make tasks searchable in Tempo? Yes, that is certainly one of our plans, is to make tasks searchable. As you just saw, you can implement task search right out of the box with the Appian Sale environment using 7.3, kind of designing a custom task report. We do look forward to adding task searching as a feature in the future releases, unspecified when, for the default task view as well. Does the e-signature get saved to a document? So the feature that we showed earlier as far as creating a written signature on an Android device, that does get saved as an image document and stored inside the document management system. It is also saved inside a process variable, so if you do want to handle it as a process variable, you can also specify that. It is done using the standard upload file component. So simply using the upload file components with all the properties of saving that into a process variable and then the document management system become available to you. Question on when will draw signature be available on iOS? That's something we're also looking at adding for future releases. We always try to keep them as much in parity as possible. Android for us was actually a little bit easier because Android includes a native drawing component that would accelerate the development of that feature versus iOS. Appian actually needs to create our own drawing framework to capture that signature. So it's taking a little bit of time just on the natural properties of those different platforms or operating systems. Future signature capability, we are looking at to add as far as new sale components, maybe individually a signature capability instead of in the context of a upload file. So that's something, a possible consideration for future as well. So did you say cascading dropdowns? Yes, with Appian Sale, you can create cascading dropdowns inside a dynamic sale interaction. Conditional, just to be clear, there's actually are these features like buttons and conditional dropdowns available in the Forms Designer. So just to reiterate, the Appian Sale environment in 7.3 applies to report dashboards, record dashboards, and task report dashboards. They do not yet apply to the Appian Forms Design time experience for task forms and process start forms. It is something that we're looking to add very shortly. Let's see here. We've been... So a number of other questions on redirecting log files to a database. Again, the log files are done using a standard JLog environment. If you do want to redirect log files to a database, you could probably do that with other log management tools, but we do use a standard JLog. It does do the files out of the box in 7.3. The passcode feature, there's a question about passcode on auto lock. I believe there is. I'd have to check the details, follow up with that on mobile passcode lock. Probably refer to you on the release notes of that feature. I don't know that offhand. Bulk process upgrade is available as an API to both our cloud customers as well as on-premise customers. So if you would like to discuss implementing bulk process upgrade to your environments, if you're a cloud-based customer, I encourage you to simply contact Appian support. That is something that we've done for a number of cloud customers, even on the preview API level as well. There's some questions on advanced form utilities for the Tempo environment. We're always looking to evolve the Tempo experience. You'll see that a lot of changes coming in Tempo over the next several months, and a lot of those capabilities that people enjoyed inside Portal, the goal is to get all those inside the Portal, the Tempo experience as well. So continue to see that evolve throughout the release cycles of version 7. So if there's questions on, so currently we have 7.2, and the question, how do we upgrade to 7.3? Do we have an upgrade document that can be followed for this? Absolutely. So if you are on an on-premise customer and you're managing your own upgrade, I would point you to the Appian Forum website. Under the software section, you'll see a migration guide as part of the documentation. So you want to follow that migration guide for managing your migration from 7.2 to 7.3. As you saw in the webinar, there's a number of considerations for maybe changes of your SMTP server notification, other types of considerations you also want to implement in the context of that upgrade as well. If you're a cloud customer, you can contact Appian support to schedule your upgrade to 7.3 or discuss when you are on the schedule to be implemented to the latest version of the product. So going through, there's a lot more questions, and I don't think I'll be able to handle all of these, but I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll try to answer as much of these offline as possible and point you to, of course, the release notes of the product. If you would like to explore more about the Appian 7.3 release, this webinar is designed to give you a kind of a graphical walkthrough of all the feature changes, but of course the release notes and the documentation goes into a lot more detail. And of course, if you have any specific questions, I encourage you to also post those to the Appian Forum social activity stream. We have to handle as much of those as possible for everyone to consume and understand the changes in 7.3 as well. So with that, I think I'd like to wrap up the presentation. And again, for those of you who had not had your questions answered, I'll try to follow up with you individually and answer those questions as well in the context of the 7.3 release upgrade. Again, finally, thank you all for attending this webinar presentation on Appian 7.3. And as a reminder, encourage all of you to explore the appianworld.com website. We look forward to meeting everyone again in person at Washington, D.C. on April 30th through May 2nd. And if you have any further questions, again, point you to Appian's forum to post those to our support and community environment. Thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on the next product announcement or tips and tricks webinar. Thank you.